Hey guys, tonight we drift gently along the banks of the Nile, where twilight has cast its golden cloak across ancient sands. You hear the slow, soothing whisper of papyrus reeds swaying, feel the gentle lap of cool river water against the wooden sides of small, tethered boats. Distantly, frogs serenade the approaching night with a sleepy, repetitive song, and overhead a warm breeze rustles date palm fronds, sounding a bit like whispers in the dark. Friendly, yet perhaps gossiping gently about your presence here tonight. Now, you probably won't survive this particular adventure, mostly because if you do, I'll simply loop this story until your brain gently surrenders to sleep, which of course is exactly the point. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from, and what time it is there right now. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The day's fierce heat has retreated, chased away by cooler air as the sun melts into the horizon, leaving streaks of orange and purple in its wake. You walk slowly through a quiet village on the Nile's edge, where mud brick houses stand humbly beneath the vast, darkening sky. Small lanterns begin to glow warmly within windows, softening the sharp outlines of roofs and walls. Around you, the villagers quietly gather, easing themselves onto reed mats laid out beside doorways. They nod greetings, each gesture as leisurely as the current drifting downstream. It's evening, after all, a time for rest, conversation, and something you might not have guessed: ancient board games. Yes, Egyptians knew how to unwind after a long day building pyramids, tending crops, or just surviving the intense midday sun. Picture them now, their relaxed posture illuminated softly by flickering oil lamps, the faint scent of burning flaxseed oil mingling pleasantly with the river's earthy aroma. Nearby, clay pots bubble gently over small fires, the fragrance of lentils and coriander wafting through the air, Egypt's comforting aroma of home cooking. And there it is, placed casually between two elderly men, a beautifully carved board. Rectangular, polished smooth by years of careful fingers tracing its surface, the wood almost glows in the dimming light. Intricately etched squares pattern its length, some faded from countless matches and endless banter. You pause, intrigued, and move closer. The players don't look up. They're too absorbed, leaning forward slightly, elbows resting on crossed knees, eyes twinkling with anticipation. It's a leisurely tension, one of gentle competition, friendly rivalry that simmered over decades. This game, played under countless twilight skies like tonight's, is called Senet, and if you haven't heard of it, don't worry. Historians didn't fully understand it either, at least not right away. It might seem strange that a culture known for monumental architecture and complex hieroglyphics would dedicate their evenings to a simple board game, but Egyptians had a talent for surprising us all, again and again. Historians still argue whether games like Senet were originally mere entertainment or something deeper. Perhaps, they suggest, these games represented life's journey itself, a small, playful metaphor for destiny, luck, and perhaps even divine intervention. And while modern, scholars debate meaning, tonight the villagers don't seem troubled by symbolism. They're focused instead on gentle teasing and laughter, punctuated by the rhythmic, satisfying click of bone dice tumbling onto the wooden board. The river murmurs softly as stars begin to blossom above, scattered like silver lotus flowers across the velvet of night. You see another group nearby, younger this time, children huddled excitedly around their own game board, painted figures marking their progress. Their laughter, softer but brighter, rises into the cool night air like sparks from a dying fire. So, as the evening deepens into night, you find yourself sinking comfortably onto a woven mat, taking your place among these peaceful players. A woman offers you a small cup of cool hibiscus tea, refreshing and sweetly tart, whispering a greeting that feels like an old friend's embrace. You nod in thanks, the gentle sip warming your senses as you glance again at the fascinating little board game at your feet. You begin to understand the appeal, not loud excitement nor fierce competition, but the quiet, communal rhythm of evening, relaxation. Like the river itself, the game flows slowly, winding its gentle way through moments of luck, strategy, and simple joy. And perhaps that's the true secret to ancient Egypt's lasting mysteries. They understood that life was about balance. After long hours beneath an unforgiving sun, building cities and raising monuments to outlast the ages, they treasured these quiet nights. They savored simple pleasures, like the gentle challenge of a board game played beneath a sky glittering softly with stars. You stretch out your legs, feeling comfortably drowsy as you watch the game continue. The dice fall again, making their comforting sound as players gently cheer or groan, emotions never rising above a peaceful murmur. It feels like home, warm, simple, filled with gentle humanity. You find your breathing slowing to match the rhythm of the night, your thoughts gently drifting downstream along with the Nile itself. As the village grows quieter and the lamps dim one by one, you lean back, eyes closing softly, lulled by whispers, laughter, and the eternal sleepy song of Egypt's ancient evenings. As your eyes flutter open again gently, you find yourself drifting deeper into the evening. The village has grown even quieter, now softened into shadowy outlines beneath a curtain of stars. Yet, not all have succumbed to sleep. A small group still sits, gathered in gentle silence around that fascinating rectangular board. You're intrigued and lean in closer, your curiosity tugging you gently forward like a papyrus reed, bowing toward the water. Tonight's mystery is Senet, one of the earliest known board games ever played, and certainly one of Egypt's best-loved pastimes. Its story reaches back over 5,000 years, into the very heart of ancient daily life. You observe the board's surface carefully, noticing its meticulous craftsmanship. Each square has been carved deeply, then carefully polished, as if every groove could hold centuries of whispered secrets and good-natured teasing. The players reach into small linen bags, retrieving tiny game pieces carved from various materials: ivory, bone, wood, and even shimmering glazed stone known as faience. Some pieces are simple cones, while others take on more whimsical shapes: tiny lions, birds, or human figures, each crafted with an artisan's delicate touch. You find yourself smiling at these tiny masterpieces, as playful today as they were millennia ago. Watching the villagers handle the pieces, placing them carefully onto the board, you wonder if each token has a personality of its own. The worn ivory lion, perhaps the lucky charm of a long line of hopeful players. The wooden cone, reliably dull but surprisingly successful. Historians still argue whether such elaborate pieces held symbolic meaning or were simply artistic flourishes by playful craftsmen. Whatever the truth, the villagers seem to cherish each token, carefully placing and moving them with practiced, affectionate fingers. Now, the rules of Senet themselves weren't recorded clearly for modern scholars to follow. At first glance, at least not until archaeologists found ancient tomb paintings and carefully etched instructions hidden within temples. A mainstream historical tidbit you might appreciate is that it was only through these detailed tomb illustrations, often showing families gathered around Senet boards, that modern historians could reconstruct the rules of this beloved game. And here's where it gets delightfully quirky. In many of these illustrations, players were not ordinary villagers but rather royal figures or even gods, carefully engaged in matches as if the outcome could influence destiny itself. You picture Ra, the sun god, calmly moving his pieces across the board, perhaps frowning slightly at the trickier moves. Or maybe Osiris, lord of the afterlife, quietly strategizing with calm dignity, ignoring Horus's teasing. These images bring you a smile, blending mythology and mundane reality with seamless charm. Back in the gentle darkness of tonight's village, you see those very same rules being played out, softly illuminated by oil lamps that flicker like miniature suns. Two players sit quietly opposite one another, eyes focused but relaxed, their faces gently warmed by lamplight. One rolls 4 thin wooden sticks instead of dice, because dice as we imagine them weren't always used, and they land softly, their shapes deciding how many spaces to move. Each stick has one marked side and one smooth side, creating a simple yet elegant method of play. You watch a young woman, thoughtful yet smiling, advance her faience bird piece. Her elderly opponent nods approvingly at her careful strategy, the gentle respect evident between generations of players. They share no harsh words, only soft laughter and murmured approval or sympathy. Historians still argue whether Senet's popularity sprang from the simple joy of strategy and chance, or from deeper spiritual significance hidden beneath each move. Some believe the board was a microcosm of life's journey, with each square symbolizing an obstacle or reward in the cycle of rebirth. But tonight, these deeper meanings fade behind a simpler truth. It's an enjoyable way to pass the time, to laugh quietly, and to celebrate the gentle companionship of friends and family under starry Egyptian skies. In the distance, the Nile whispers its slow, continuous lullaby. You find your breath matching its steady, rhythmic pace. Nearby, a small cat, sleek and content, curls lazily at the edge of a mat, eyes half-lidded in sleepy approval. Animals always know how to appreciate a peaceful night, especially in Egypt, where cats enjoyed nearly divine status. You glance at the feline again, wondering briefly if it ever tries to join in the game, though you suspect it prefers supervising, probably thinking humans complicate relaxation. As the match draws quietly toward its end, the younger player gently lifts her final piece onto the last square. The older man chuckles softly in defeat, nodding graciously at her victory. There's no disappointment here, only warmth. They reset the board, carefully placing each beloved piece back into the linen bag, preparing perhaps for one more gentle round before sleep fully claims them. You lean back, absorbing the gentle rhythm of the game and the night, feeling a comforting heaviness begin to soften your limbs. The stars overhead seem brighter now, shining gently down, bathing the village in silvery tranquility. These moments are timeless, you realize. Ancient Egyptians, just like you tonight, treasured evenings like this, peaceful interludes, gently playful, easing them softly from daily worries into restful sleep. Your eyes flutter gently closed once, more lulled by whispers, quiet laughter, and the sleepy, comforting murmur of Senet pieces gently return to rest. You sink softly toward sleep, guided by the quiet joy of an evening spent in simple, timeless play. As your breathing deepens, a gentle rustle nudges your eyes open once more. The Senet board, having served its purpose for tonight, rests quietly beneath the starlight, while your attention drifts lazily towards something etched faintly into the nearby wall. Intrigued, you lean in closer, running a curious finger along grooves carved carefully into the cool stone. Here on the wall, captured forever in delicate relief, are the very rules of Senet, etched by ancient hands thousands of years ago. This gentle revelation feels almost magical, as though someone whispered these instructions through time, hoping a future traveler might pause, read, and understand. It's a soft, timeless greeting, bridging centuries to gently reach you tonight. Vasi. Markings on the wall depict the game clearly enough, detailing squares and movements in subtle but deliberate strokes. The tiny images illustrate that Senet boards typically held 30 squares arranged in 3 rows of 10, each square holding symbolic meanings, though exactly what each meant varied gently over generations and among families. Historians still argue whether certain squares represented luck, fate, or passages between life and the afterlife. But tonight, as the soft Nile breeze murmurs reassurance, the squares seem to simply represent an easy, peaceful journey toward sleep. Beside the squares, the wall inscriptions carefully portray the movements of the pieces, gently rolling sticks or knuckle bones dictating progress along the board. Rolling 4 sticks, each marked differently, guided the pace. If all landed marked side up, the move was 4 spaces. If none showed marks, 5 spaces. Any other result yielded fewer. Simple yet thoughtful, each roll gently nudging the game forward like a softly whispered story. Your eyes drift downward along the wall, finding further inscriptions that suggest Senet wasn't merely a pleasant pastime. The images show a deeper meaning, a reflection of life's journey itself. Egyptian culture often blurred lines between daily activities and spiritual symbolism, weaving ordinary pleasures seamlessly into profound insights about destiny, fortune, and even eternity. One inscription seems particularly charming. It shows a small figure crossing the board step by gentle step, encountering symbols you suspect represent good luck, protective gods, or perhaps pitfalls to avoid. And at the final square, the tiny carved figure pauses, arms raised in quiet triumph, arriving at a space that historians have debated endlessly. Many believe this final square symbolized victory, success, or rebirth into the afterlife. A comforting thought under a gently glowing crescent moon. A mainstream historical fact whispers into your mind. Senet wasn't just beloved by ordinary Egyptians. Pharaohs themselves treasured this game deeply. Tutankhamun's own tomb revealed beautifully preserved Senet boards, crafted from ebony, ivory, and precious metals, resting gently beside the king, ready to accompany him through eternity. Tonight, it feels as if you share a quiet connection with these ancient kings, imagining them softly chuckling, eyes sparkling in lamplight as they moved pieces thoughtfully across their magnificent boards. Nearby, a soft chuckle draws your attention. An elderly woman, her face warmly lit by a gentle oil lamp, points softly to another, simpler wall drawing. "These instructions helped generations," she murmurs to you, her voice rich with gentle amusement. "Though no one really needs them now." She smiles warmly. "Senet's in our blood, passed gently from grandparent to child, forever." You nod slowly, touched by this timeless continuity. In fact, some historians speculate this wall carving might have served more symbolic than instructional purposes, perhaps ensuring that Senet's deeper significance, its subtle life lessons, would never fade, carved permanently into stone and memory. You look around again, noticing other inscriptions nearby, carefully etched by other hands across generations, tiny scenes of daily life, softly lit by lamplight. Farmers at work in fields, boats gently sailing along the Nile, families gathered peacefully. Each scene feels deeply human, gently universal, like whispered stories shared around quiet evening fires. Your gaze returns gently to the Senet carving, feeling a soft smile settle comfortably on your lips. You wonder briefly about the artisan. Who carved this? Was it a young apprentice carefully learning under watchful eyes, or perhaps an elderly master, quietly etching these rules as a final gift to his village, to the future? Historians still argue whether artists carved these instructions strictly for posterity, or as personal, almost poetic reflections on life's journey. Perhaps the answer gently resides somewhere between a practical guide and a thoughtful meditation, all carved carefully into stone beneath countless sleepy stars. As you softly ponder these thoughts, another gentle chuckle stirs you back to the present. The elderly woman has moved quietly closer, handing you a small carved figurine, ivory, polished to a soft gleam from generations of play. "Keep it," she whispers. "May it remind you that life, like Senet, moves slowly and gently toward its destined end. The joy is in the journey, not the victory." You accept the token gratefully, feeling its gentle weight in your palm, warm from years of care. It seems to whisper comfort, reassurance, a timeless truth softly shared. You thank her quietly, your voice blending with the soft hum of nighttime insects serenading the Nile. Feeling profoundly peaceful, you recline slowly onto the woven mat, clutching the small token gently. Above, stars glimmer softly, their steady presence comforting, constant, and deeply soothing. You close your eyes gently, breathing slowing to match the timeless rhythm of Senet life and the gentle Nile itself. Sleep draws nearer, embraced in the warmth of ancient whispers, carved rules, and gentle laughter drifting quietly through the night. Tonight, ancient Egypt cradles you gently in timeless comfort, whispering softly that life's simplest pleasures, like an evening spent playing Senet, can offer the deepest peace. The night deepens thick with calm, as stars shift overhead like ancient game pieces, moving slowly across a divine board. You stir gently, rolling onto your side, eyes still half-lidded but open enough to catch movement at the edge of the village. A glow flickers between two palm trees, accompanied by soft murmurs and the creak of woven sandals pressing gently into the sand. You sit up slightly, curious once more. Dionysus isn't here tonight, no wine god on a donkey, but you do catch Sight of another god being quietly honored, Thoth, the ibis-headed deity of wisdom and writing. A painted clay statue of him sits in a quiet alcove surrounded by candles and incense, watching over the small gathering of villagers with timeless patience. You walk quietly toward the firelight, joining the group as they sit cross-legged around. Another board, this one much older than the others you've seen. Its surface has cracks from centuries of use, the corners worn smooth from reverent fingers. But what captures your attention is the arrangement of its squares, not linear like Senet, but circular, spiraling inward like a coiled serpent. One of the elders nods knowingly. Mehen, she says, the game of the serpent. This game, you learn, is older than Senet, its spiral board shaped to resemble the coiled body of the serpent god Mehen, protector of the sun god Ra. The sun, after all, needed guarding during his nightly journey through the underworld, and Mehen curled tightly around him, shielding him from darkness and chaos. You can imagine that spiraling journey now, as your fingers gently trace the path of the game's carved groove. Mehen was a game of strategy, yes, but also of stories. Players used tiny lion or lioness figurines to make their way along the serpent's back, racing to the center or perhaps towards safety, depending on the variation. Historians still argue whether Mehen had fixed rules or evolved over time, shifting like the Nile with each new generation of players. Some suggest it mirrored spiritual trials. Others think it was just a lovely excuse to carve tiny lions. One of the figurines is passed to you. It's heavy, stone-smoothed and delightfully fierce. Wide eyes, a playful snarl and a slightly chipped paw. You hold it with both hands, surprised at how warm it feels from passing through so many generations. The elder chuckles gently. She's the swift one, he says. Always charges ahead but forgets to look sideways. You glance again at the board and notice the pieces positioned in varying arcs along the serpent's back. The elder rolls a set of 4 stones, flat pebbles polished to a shine, used here like dice. They clatter gently in a shallow dish and are read based on how they land, face up or face down. Simplicity itself. There's something deeply relaxing about this kind of play. No loud counters, no complicated rulebooks, just gravity, chance, and soft laughter. You sit with the group joining in, moving your lioness cautiously forward as the others cheer or gently tease. There's a rhythm here too, slower even than Senet, a winding pace. Mehen isn't about racing. It's about circling, a gentle spiral inward, echoing the nightly sun's descent and return. You begin to feel the pattern in your breathing, in and out, around and through. A mainstream historical fact drifts gently into your awareness. Mehen, faded from use by the end of Egypt's Old Kingdom. Unlike Senet, which endured for millennia, Mehen simply vanished from public life for reasons still debated by scholars. Perhaps its religious associations faded, or maybe spirals were harder to store in closets. But remnants of the game remain, etched into stone, painted on tomb walls, and echoed softly into night's gathering. A quirky detail floats up too. One ancient tomb painting shows what appears to be a cat swatting the Mehen board mid-game, scattering the lion tokens into confusion. Whether that was a real event immortalized in art or simply a moment of humor added by a playful artisan, no one knows. But tonight, as a sleek village cat strolls past and nearly steps into the game, you smile knowingly. Some things never change. You glance around at the faces illuminated by firelight, so calm, so content. Some nod along as they play, others hum softly to themselves. The only sounds are the hiss of the fire, the click of tokens, and the steady rhythm of stone pieces rolled and moved. It's less of a game now and more of a meditation. Historians still argue whether Mehen was ever really meant to be won, or if it was designed simply to be played, an eternal cycle with no pressure, no victory, no loss. You like that idea. A game not for glory, but for grounding. Your lioness piece nears the center. Others gently guide theirs beside you, and soon all players sit back, smiling, watching the figurines rest quietly within the serpent's spiral. The game for now is done, and with its closing comes a soft silence, as warm and enveloping as a woven blanket. Someone pours a little water onto the fire, and steam rises gently, curling like the serpent of Mehen itself, ascending into the stars above. You lean back on your hands, the cooling sand beneath your fingers grounding you to this moment. The game pieces are gathered with care, wrapped in linen, placed in a small wooden box that squeaks shut like a door to a memory. As the group disperses, one villager turns to you and murmurs, "May your dreams circle gently tonight." You nod, deeply touched, holding that blessing like a precious amulet in your mind. You return to your mat, the fire's embers fading, your heartbeat slow and steady. The stars swirl softly overhead, as if reflecting the coiled path of Mehen itself. And you drift again, spiraling inward toward peaceful sleep. The next morning arrives gently, with sunlight filtering through linen canopies and warming the stone beneath your mat. You stretch, limbs still relaxed from the deep sleep gifted by Mehen's slow spiral. Somewhere nearby, water sloshes softly into clay jars, and the quiet rhythm of broom bristles sweeping dust welcomes the day in ancient harmony. But as you sit up and blink away the sleep, you hear something different, clinks and rattles distinct from Senet sticks or Mehen stones. You follow the sound, trailing the voices of two boys hunched over a small table shaded by woven palm fronds. They laugh between turns, flicking polished pieces across a long, narrow board. Their game is fast, full of movement and cheers, and it's not Senet nor Mehen. This one is newer to you. A curious local notices your interest and grins. "Hounds and Jackals," she says simply, offering you a seat on a reed mat nearby. Good. For the restless ones. The board itself is beautiful, carved from dark wood, long and rectangular, with two parallel rows of holes forming a winding track. Each hole is a stop, a pause in a race between two sets of pieces. One shaped like hounds, the other like jackals, each with tiny ears and proud, upright postures. Their bodies are thin and elegant, painted in warm reds and cool blacks. This game was known by different names throughout Egypt's long reign, and while the name Hounds and Jackals is modern, the game itself was discovered in tombs dating as far back as the Middle Kingdom. A mainstream historical note, a fully intact version of the board, with ivory playing sticks and animal-headed pegs, was found buried beside Pharaoh Amenemhat IV, suggesting that even royalty enjoyed this quick-paced diversion. But the rules, that's the fun part. Historians still argue over how exactly it was played. Was it a racing game like backgammon, a contest of strategy like chess, or a game of sheer luck decided by the random fall of sticks? Evidence points in all directions, and much of what's known is based on patient guesswork and comparisons to similar games found in neighboring cultures. The two boys don't seem concerned by historical inconsistencies. They shout, laugh, and knock their animal tokens forward with a kind of gleeful urgency. The hound overtakes the jackal. Then the jackal leaps forward 3 spaces. And then, oh the joy of it, the hound misses a turn entirely. Groans, laughter, and playful shoulder nudges follow. You find yourself chuckling too. One of the boys turns and offers you a jackal peg. You accept with mock solemnity, kneeling beside the board. The peg is smooth in your hand, lovingly carved, its eyes painted with comically serious brows. You join the game and, without knowing all the rules, find yourself swept into the rhythm. Roll, move, laugh, repeat. The race is quick. Tension rises. The boys cheer when your jackal pulls ahead, then collapse theatrically when you fall behind. It's absurd, and it's wonderful, this simple, wild little game that captures attention and releases laughter. A quirky detail floats into your mind. In some later Egyptian depictions, players are shown throwing their arms up in mock despair or victory mid-game, suggesting that even in the temples of stone and shadow, joy found its way through carved wood and friendly rivalry. When the game ends, there's no prize, no score, just breathless giggles and high fives. Well, high palms. One boy whispers something to his friend and scurries off. He returns moments later with a small linen pouch. Inside, a carved jackal peg, its paint faded and one ear chipped. He presses it into your hand. "Luck," he says. "So you remember how to play?" You nod, touched, fingers curling around the piece. It's light, but somehow weighty, like memories often are. Later, a nearby elder explains that while Hounds and Jackals may have fallen out of favor by the end of the New Kingdom, its legacy endures in subtle echoes. Some scholars argue it inspired later Roman games, or even early versions of Pachisi and Ludo. Others insist its spirit lives on not in mechanics, but in the way it brings people together across language, age, and class. And perhaps that's the real thread linking Egypt's ancient games. Not the shapes or rules, but the quiet human need to play, to laugh at luck, to nudge a carved animal forward and pretend, if just for a moment, that the world runs on rolls and hops and friendly wagers. As you say goodbye to the boys and pocket the jackal peg, your gaze lifts toward the village once more. Another board is being unrolled beneath a fig tree. Further down the path, two elderly women sit facing each other, grinning over a familiar Senet set. And at the riverbank, a child draws a Mehen spiral in the sand with a stick, pausing now and then to place pebbles at each bend. You realize that in this village the games are everywhere, woven into the rhythm of life like thread into linen. And in this moment, you're not just visiting history, you're part of it, playing your piece, taking your turn. You head back toward your mat, slowly, feet brushing over warm sand. The morning. Sun hangs high now, casting golden light through swaying fronds. You cradle the jackal peg in your palm and feel its warmth again. Maybe it's luck, maybe it's memory, maybe it's just wood, but it feels like joy. You return to the shade of a sycamore tree where soft shadows ripple across the stone. The breeze brings with it the scent of date cakes and sweet barley bread, and for a moment, you just sit there, cross-legged and calm, the jackal peg resting gently in your hand. Around you, the village pulses quietly, everyone engaged in their own slow rituals, sweeping, mending, storytelling. And then, faintly, you hear it again, the now familiar clatter of carved pieces, the murmur of a game in motion. But this time it's not a game you've seen before. You wander down a narrow path toward a low, open house, where a family of 5 is huddled around a flat, square board scratched directly into the hard-packed floor. Smooth stones mark each player's position, and a woven basket holds a modest pile of casting sticks. It's a game with no name you recognize, but clearly beloved and equally ancient. You sit nearby, observing. The father leans over the board, squinting slightly. With a flick of his wrist, he tosses 4 thin wooden sticks into the air. They spin, then land with a muffled tap, 2 face up, 2 face down. He smiles, moves a pebble forward 3 spaces. The children groan in unison, but playfully. Local. Rules, the mother explains to you in a low voice, as though sharing a sacred kitchen recipe. Some we've learned from elders, some we made up when the rains didn't come. You nod, struck by the intimacy of it. This isn't just a game, it's a patchwork of generations. A living artifact passed down not through carved stone or royal tombs, but by memory and improvisation, night after night. Historians still argue whether games like this existed broadly or were unique to specific households, evolving like lullabies, local dialects, or recipes for sour beer. She picks up a pebble, rolls it between her fingers. My grandmother said, it keeps our minds soft and our hearts strong. There's something special about seeing the informal, homemade version of history. It's not gilded or preserved behind museum glass, but alive, breathing in every roll of the stick and shift of a stone. This game isn't in the textbooks, yet here it is, played with just as much care and joy as Senet or Mehen. You're handed a pebble, no instructions, just a smile. You toss the sticks, 2 up, 2 down, and earn your first move. The children cheer like you've solved a riddle. One of them immediately challenges you, confident he can win. The mother shrugs. He's 8, and unbeaten this week. The game continues, flowing like conversation. There are pauses for giggles, rules clarified mid-match, debates over how far one should move when the sticks all fall flat. You're not entirely sure if they're making up new rules as they go, but it doesn't matter. The spirit of the game is intact. Competitive yet cozy, spontaneous yet anchored in tradition. And isn't that what games have always been? Tiny stories we tell with our hands, rituals of chance, social puzzles. In every culture, in every age, from the grandeur of the pyramids to the quiet corners of this village, people have invented ways to play, not just to win, but to connect. A mainstream historical observation fits itself gently into this thought. Archaeologists often discover evidence of informal games, scratched onto floors, etched into courtyard stones, carved on clay shards. These were rarely recorded in detail, but the marks remain, suggesting people everywhere, not just the elite, played to pass time, teach children, and share small joys. The youngest child has taken to drawing hearts and stars around the board, using a bit of charcoal. You catch her glancing at you with a grin, then drawing a stick figure beside the symbols. It has a short beard and a little stone in its hand. "That's you," she says. "You play well." You thank her, knowing full well she let you win that last round. A quirky note drifts through your memory. Some fringe historians believe that certain homegrown Egyptian games later influenced or evolved into regional variations across Africa and the Mediterranean. Mancala, for instance, with its rows of scooped-out pits and handfuls of seeds, may be a distant cousin of these stone and stick traditions. But of course, that's hard to prove. Cultures are excellent at borrowing joy without leaving a paper trail. After a few rounds, the family begins to tidy up. Pebbles go back into a small reed basket. The sticks are wrapped in linen. The board remains drawn into the earth, ready for the next game. The children scatter, chasing each other through dust motes that shimmer in the late morning light. You help gather the pieces, placing the pebble you used into the mother's open palm. But she shakes her head, curls your fingers closed around it. "A good guest always keeps their first token," she says. That's how the stories keep traveling. You look at the smooth little pebble in your palm. It's just a rock, really. Worn and round, but it feels weighted with meaning, like it carries the laughter of this morning and the warmth of the family that invited you in. You stand slowly, heart lighter, hands fuller. 2 game pieces now, the jackal peg and the pebble, tucked safely into your pouch. You wonder how many more there might be, how many quiet corners of history have games we'll never fully know, but that were once as vital and joyful as any. Grand ceremony. As you walk back toward the riverbank, another breeze greets you, warm and welcome. The Nile sparkles beneath the rising sun, and the world hums with gentle life. You find your mat, settle once more, and stretch your limbs in the soft warmth. Above you, a stork glides lazily through the sky, and beside you, somewhere between your feet and the sand, a child's drawing of you still waits, etched in charcoal, smiling. The day passes gently, its edges soft with heat and the scent of honeyed dates warming in baskets by sunlit doorways. You rest in patches of shade, the jackal peg and river pebble close by, their presence almost talismanic now, tokens not just of play but of welcome, of quiet invitation into another world. By afternoon, you find yourself following the sound of flutes, light and playful, like someone trying to whistle away responsibility. The melody leads you to the edge of the village, where a cluster of people, young and old, gather beneath a grove of sycamore trees. A canopy of green sways above them, dappling the ground in patterns that dance with each breeze. There, laid out on mats and low tables, is a miniature festival of board games, not a formal event. No hieroglyphic banners or ritual chants. Just people playing. But there's a distinct energy in the air, a shared rhythm, almost musical in its flow. You step closer and see different boards lined up like paintings. Senet, Mehen, Hounds and Jackals, and others you've never seen before. Boards made from clay, ivory, basket reeds, even etched directly into tabletops. This isn't just game night, it's a tradition, a communal gathering that bridges age, class, and profession. One woman with sun-creased cheeks and a linen apron sits cross-legged across from a man in priest's robes. A boy in a fish seller's tunic challenges a middle-aged bricklayer. Everyone plays, everyone laughs, and everyone, for now, is equal. A merchant seated on a colorful cushion waves you. Over. Festival day, he says warmly. We honor the gods by honoring each other, through games, through joy. You join a table where a trio is setting up yet another version of Senet. This one slightly different. Additional markings on the final row, new symbols scratched in. House rules, someone explains, winking. You're handed a game piece, an oblong bead, translucent and cool in your palm. A mainstream historical fact floats to the surface. In some parts of ancient Egypt, festivals were centered around community games. While most people associate ancient festivals with music, food, and grand parades, archaeological evidence, such as depictions in tomb paintings and inscriptions, suggests that play had its place too. Not just for children, but for adults, for priests, for rulers. Historians still argue whether these gatherings had official religious significance or were more spontaneous celebrations of rest. Some believe the board games themselves took on ritual weight during festivals, acts of symbolic navigation through fate and fortune. Others suggest that what mattered more than meaning was participation, presence. At your table, that certainly seems true. Your fellow players don't seem especially concerned with winning. One woman makes exaggerated predictions before every move, another invents backstories for the game pieces. Your bead becomes the wandering river spirit, apparently, with a tendency to get lost and end up back at the beginning. You find yourself laughing more than calculating, and it feels wonderful. Suddenly, the sound of clapping breaks through the air. All heads turn toward the central grove, where a young boy stands on a crate holding up a tiny board with wild pride. "Fastest win of the day," someone calls out. People cheer, a few laugh and shout mock challenges. The boy bows dramatically, then hops down and returns to his game. A quirky tidbit nudges its way into your mind. Some Egyptian towns held local contests during planting or harvest seasons, where the winner of a particular board game earned the King of the Day title, complete with garlands, sweet wine, and occasionally a carved amulet. These events may have had more in common with modern game nights than solemn temple rituals, but they still held meaning, especially in the bonds they nurtured. Back under your tree, the game winds down. Someone else wins, though no one keeps. Score. The river spirit bead ends up 3 squares behind the finish line, but no one minds. Another match is suggested, but you wave it off for now, choosing instead to wander through the crowd. As you pass each game board, each shared laugh, you begin to feel it. A quiet legacy carried not through monuments or war stories, but through hands that gather around a board, through moments of joy passed down like heirlooms, and you see it everywhere now. A girl paints her favorite game pieces with bits of crushed berry. 2 elders argue about a rule from 30 years ago. A dog naps, with its paw on a Mehen board. The air hums with stories and play. Historians still debate the seriousness of these games. Were they spiritual exercises, harmless distractions, teaching tools for children? The truth is probably yes to all. They were what people needed them to be. And today, here beneath the sycamores, they are simply enough. Eventually, as the sun slips lower, a gentle bell rings from the village edge. People begin packing up the boards. Game pieces are collected in pouches. Mats are shaken out. Farewells are shared. "Until next time," someone says, patting you on the shoulder. You pocket your translucent bead with quiet care, adding it to the jackal peg and river pebble. 3 pieces now. 3 gentle memories, smooth and small and unforgettable. You walk slowly back through the grove as golden light turns orange, then slips quietly into blue. The flutes play one final song, soft, slow, and perfect for walking home with full hands and a fuller heart. Tonight, you'll dream of boards and tokens, of laughter between moves, and of the soft hush of community found not in ceremony but in simple play. As dusk folds itself across the village like a warm linen sheet, you find yourself perched on a low stone wall overlooking the Nile. The last flickers of sunlight ripple across its surface, casting the water in golds and purples. Birds dip low, returning to hidden perches, and the occasional splash of a fish rises up, echoing in the hush. Behind you, the gentle murmur of the day settling down continues, bowls being washed, mats being dusted, doors creaking closed. But the games you've noticed don't end with the sun. They simply change form. A few steps away, in the glow of a single flickering oil lamp, a grandfather and granddaughter crouch over a slab of smooth limestone. They aren't playing Senet or Mehen or even Hounds and Jackals. They're drawing. With charcoaled fingers, they mark out a grid. giggling together as they name each square after family members. You hear the girl laugh. "This one's you, Grandpa, so if I land here, you owe me a fig." He grumbles good-naturedly but doesn't argue. It's not a traditional board game, not in the archaeological sense, but it is in its way a game all the same. Spontaneous, light-hearted, crafted from the moment itself. You realize then that not all games are preserved in museums. Some live only in the breath between generations. You approach, careful not to interrupt, but the girl waves you closer. "Want to play?" she asks brightly. "We're making up the rules as we go." You smile and nod, kneeling beside them. She hands you a pebble, then points to a crudely drawn square with a crooked, little smiley face. "That's the danger tile," she whispers. "You have to sing if you land there." Your turn comes quickly. The pebble land on the danger tile. The old man chuckles, and the girl stares at you expectantly. So you hum, just a few notes. A lullaby from nowhere in particular, but soft, a little silly, and enough to make the girl clap and giggle. That's the moment you realize the rules of the game don't matter nearly as much as the rules of the heart. This is how connection forms. In laughter, in song, in shared silliness under starlight, a mainstream historical note floats up, one worth whispering into this quiet night. Many Egyptian families are believed to have invented their own games. Archaeologists have uncovered scratched-out grids on house floors, game pieces shaped like fruit seeds, rules whispered through oral tradition. Some of these games have never been deciphered. Others were simply never recorded because they weren't meant to last beyond the evening. Historians still argue whether these unrecorded games were variations of Senet or entirely new inventions born of boredom, storytelling, or necessity. But most agree, the ancient Egyptians played more than we know. Much more. You turn back to the girl as she rolls her pebble. She lands on the grandpa square and demands a fig. He produces one from a pouch with mock reluctance, and she pops it in her mouth with a victorious grin. "That's 3, she says, smug. "You better watch out." He raises an eyebrow. "If I land on your square, I get your bead." She gasps, suddenly serious, and cradles her bead like a sacred relic. A quirky tidbit bubbles up. Some scholars believe children's games in ancient Egypt were just as widespread and inventive as adult ones. Kids used whatever they had, sticks, scraps of fabric, old bits of pottery, to turn boredom into play. One fragment of papyrus even includes what might be the oldest known knock-knock joke, involving a crocodile and a loaf of bread. You lose. The next round. The girl draws a new tile called Guest Square and decides it means you have to tell a story. You begin softly, crafting something sleepy and warm, about a jackal who dreamed he was a lion, and a pebble that thought it was a star. They like it. They don't interrupt. When you finish, the girl whispers, "That's my new favorite story." Eventually, the game fades. The lamp guttering in the breeze grows lower, and the old man yawns. The girl gathers the pebbles, brushing the chalky grid away with her sleeve. "We'll play again tomorrow," she promises. She places one of her pebbles in your palm. "For your story," she says before skipping inside. You sit alone now on the stone wall, holding the pebble. It's small and pinkish, likely just a bit of local quartz, but it glimmers faintly in the moonlight. You line it up beside your other tokens, the jackal peg, the river pebble, the translucent bead, and now this fig-sticky pink charm. A constellation of memory. And you think perhaps this is what Egyptians meant when they placed games in tombs, not just to entertain the spirit, but to remind it that it once played, once laughed, once joined hands with others and made up stories under sycamore trees and moon-dusted skies. Historians still debate whether the board games found in tombs were literal diversions or metaphors for cosmic journeys. But maybe they were simpler still, souvenirs from lives well lived. The moon rises higher. The Nile whispers in the distance, weaving silver ribbons through the dark. You stretch your legs and lean back, the warmth of the day now a memory, but the glow of connection still present. The stone wall at your back, the tokens in your pouch, the smile of a child who invented a rule just for you. Tomorrow, more stories will be told, more rules invented, more pieces moved. But for now, the night fears still and your heart is full. The next morning greets you softly, like a familiar friend who knows you're not quite ready to wake. A breeze filters through palm fronds, ruffling the edges of your linen wrap. The village stirs in gentle waves, roosters crowing from somewhere. Behind the granary, the thud of footsteps on hardened earth, and the creak of wooden water buckets being drawn from wells. Today, your path leads to the edge of the village, where low stone terraces overlook the open fields. Here, under a broad canvas of pale sky, sits a different kind of board, a traveling board worn from sand, sun, and movement. You find a man crouched over it, squinting at the scratches etched across its surface. It's not as refined as the others, no inlaid ivory, no painted tokens. Just a carved slab balanced on a stone, with lines and dots roughly marked by what looks like a bone knife. He glances up and grins, gesturing you closer. "Merchant's board," he says, tapping the surface. "Goes wherever I go." You sit, intrigued, dusting off your knees. The man is leathery, sun-kissed, with a satchel slung over his shoulder and worn sandals. His board, like him, looks like it's traveled miles, edges smooth from years of handling, faint grooves at either end from being tied down with string or cord during travel. A mainstream historical insight shuffles forward in your mind. Egyptian, traders often brought game boards with them as part of their travel gear. Simple foldable boards carved from wood or soft stone provided both entertainment and familiarity in foreign places. These portable pastimes weren't just for pleasure, they were tools of diplomacy, of building trust across cultural lines, and sometimes just a way to pass time while waiting for barges to unload. The merchant lays down a handful of pebbles, different sizes and colors, clearly collected from various stops along the Nile. "No proper pieces left," he shrugs. "Lost them in a flood." He grins. "But pebbles always listen better anyway." You begin to play. The game is unfamiliar, a grid-based race of some kind, with simple forward motions and a few strange rules. "If your pebble lands on mine, you owe me a song," he says with mock sternness. "And if it jumps too, you recite a proverb." You comply, sharing a lullaby learned in your own childhood. He claps in delight, then gives a proverb you've never heard before. "A net with no hole still catches the lazy." You laugh, unsure what it means, but loving the sound of it anyway. The merchant talks as you play, telling tales of river trade, of villages with game rules unlike any he'd seen. One place had square boards with circles in the corners, another used flat coins and bird feathers. He leans in, lowering his voice. "And once, I played a board carved into the belly of a crocodile statue. They said the game was cursed." He winks. "I lost, of course." A quirky tidbit. Some Egyptian traders are believed to have introduced local games to neighboring cultures, and vice versa. While trade routes carried gold, papyrus, and spices, they also carried joy, game boards, rules, and new ways to play. Some scholars suggest that ancient Mesopotamian and Levantine games evolved through this cultural mingling, sharing similarities with Egyptian predecessors. Historians still argue whether these traveling boards were formal tools or informal gifts, whether a game offered at a stop along the Nile was a calculated social gesture or just an honest offering of connection. You suspect it was a little of both. After all, few things break barriers like play. The merchant finishes the round, raising his arms in triumph, though neither of you is entirely sure who won. He packs up the pebbles into a cloth pouch, tucks the board under his arm, and rises, with a groan. "You travel?" he asks. You shake your head. He nods thoughtfully. "When you do, bring a board. Makes the road shorter." Before he goes, he offers one of the pebbles to you, a smooth oval-shaped one with a faint stripe running down its middle. "For your set," he says, already turning away. "That one's from Abydos. Talks when it's warm. You add it carefully to your pouch, joining the jackal peg, the translucent bead, the river pebble, and the child's pink token. 5 now. A collection, not of treasures, but of moments, people, laughs. As the merchant disappears down the path, his satchel bouncing, you sit a little longer by the field. Children walk by, balancing jugs on their heads. A farmer waves lazily, and a goat tries to eat your sandal. You brush it away gently, chuckling, then pick up a stick and sketch your own game board in the dirt. A little bit of Senet, a hint of Mehen, some new rules just for fun. Maybe one day someone will play it, maybe not. But it feels right to leave something behind, even if it's only scratched in sand. The breeze picks up, warm and dusty. It carries with it the sound of drums from the other end of the village, faint, festive, calling people to gather again. You dust off your hands, gather your things, and rise slowly. And as you walk back into the heart of the village, pebble in pouch, bored, in mind the world feels just a little more playful, a little more connected. You begin to wonder how many other games are out there, tucked into corners, carried across deserts, shared between strangers. You wonder how many more pieces you'll collect, and you hope, quietly, there are many. The village feels different tonight. Not louder, not brighter, just full, like a quiet celebration swelling through its bones. Every corner hums with warmth, oil lamps flickering from clay niches, families gathering under stretched linen awnings, food being passed hand to hand. And here in the center of it all, on a large woven mat stretched beneath a canopy of fig branches, something special is happening. You ease into a spot along the edge, joining a semicircle of villagers, young and old, all watching a man in a dark blue robe who leans over a massive board unlike any you've seen. It's not carved from wood or stone. It's stitched into cloth, an embroidered tapestry of lines, symbols and squares bordered with gold thread. This isn't a board for casual play. This is something sacred. This, a soft voice beside you says, is the game of the journey. You turn to see an elderly woman with sharp eyes and a staff wrapped in blue linen. She nods toward the board. Played once a year, on the eve of the flood's retreat. You nod slowly, as though you've known this all along. The board before you is unfamiliar, but you feel drawn to it. A labyrinth of images winds across the cloth. Sun discs, papyrus stalks, crocodiles, boats, stars, and wide-eyed masks. It doesn't appear to follow any pattern, and yet it pulls your gaze like a tide. Tonight, 4 players sit at each side of the board, each with a different token. One carved from dark stone, one of gold-painted wood, one from polished shell, and one from blue faience. They represent more than pieces. They feel like avatars, each step forward marking progress not just through the game, but through some greater story. A mainstream historical fact whispers through memory. Egyptians often saw life itself as a journey, a movement through stages of hardship, discovery, and balance. Their stories, myths, and ceremonies reflected this deeply held belief. Some scholars propose that ceremonial board games like this one, rare and sparsely documented, may have served as symbolic reenactments of this journey, guiding players through allegorical terrain toward wisdom or rebirth. You watch as a player rolls 3 throwing sticks. They land with 2 marks up, 1 down. He moves the shell token to a space marked with an ibis, and the crowd hums with approval. The elder beside you smiles. Thoth blesses clever movement, she murmurs. Next, the faience token lands on a crocodile. The group groans in sympathy. Back 3 spaces, someone whispers. A young boy leans over and asks, "But why crocodiles?" His father replies softly, "Because every journey has danger, even when played under stars." You realize then, this is more than a game. It's a story told in moves. Each piece moves along the tapestry like a soul traveling through the duat, the mythic Egyptian underworld. There are traps and boons, challenges and rests, and every roll reshapes the tale. A fringe theory flutters in. Some believe these elaborate, ceremonial games were not only tools of meditation, but also means to test one's readiness for spiritual progress, a rehearsal for the trials of the afterlife. Others claim they were simple metaphors, a way for people to feel agency over the unknown. You decide, as you always do now, that perhaps the truth is both. The game continues. A player chants softly as she moves. Another closes his eyes before casting his sticks. There's reverence here, but also laughter. And even in its ritual weight, the game remains a kind of play. The crowd watches in rapt quiet, reacting with gasps, smiles, and that slow ripple of communal breath-holding before a critical move. You feel your heartbeat sync with theirs, lulled into rhythm by the clatter of sticks, the slide of tokens, the soft murmurs of the watchers. Finally, the gold-painted token reaches the last square, a lotus surrounded by a ring of stars. The crowd exhales. The player touches the token reverently and whispers, "Reunited with the sky." The other players nod and remove their pieces. The game ends not with a shout, but a silence. A pause so gentle it feels like sleep settling. Into the bones. Someone passes around a tray of pomegranate seeds and small fig cakes. You accept yours, the sweetness grounding you in the present moment. The elder taps your hand gently and opens her palm. In it is a tiny square of cloth, embroidered with a single gold star. "Souvenir," she says, "from the journey." You take it, folding it carefully, slipping it into your pouch alongside the growing collection. The jackal peg, the river pebble, the bead, the fig-sticky pink stone, the Abydos pebble, and now this soft token of a celestial endpoint. As the players rise and begin to roll up the great cloth, you remain seated a while longer. The stars overhead mirror those sewn into the board. The warm hush around you feels ancient and new. Historians still argue whether games like this were rare rituals or common traditions embellished over time. But sitting here, fingers brushing the edge of the now empty mat, you no longer feel the need to know. What matters is the moment, the stillness, the shared breath, the quiet joy. Tonight you witnessed a story played with hands instead of voices, and it settled into your heart like an old truth, softly remembered. As the stars wheel gently overhead, you linger in the echo of the ceremonial game. The embroidered star in your pouch warms against your side, like a tiny ember carried home from a sacred fire. There's a quiet reverence in your limbs, a softness in your breath, and yet something stirs in the night air. Something more playful, mischievous. You hear footsteps pattering through the sand, then a burst of whispered laughter. You follow the sound through the shadowy lanes between houses, lantern light flickering across mud brick walls. There, in the courtyard of a weaving house, a small group has gathered with torches stuck in jars of sand, their glow illuminating a hand-drawn board scratched onto a clay-covered platform. This board is rough and wild, like a Senet board that partied too hard and never went back to school. It has extra squares, winding paths, odd detours. On one corner, someone has drawn a crude crocodile, in another, a loaf of bread. A tall man in a tattered sash points at it and says loudly, "Land here. You owe the baker 2 compliments." The group roars with laughter. You've stumbled upon the after-hours game, the unofficial, probably not approved by any high priest version of ancient Egyptian board fun. You ease onto a nearby stool, eyes adjusting to the chaotic rules as a woman, with henna'd fingertips offers you a piece. It's just a bit of carved bone, probably from some meal long ago. "You're on the scarab team now," she declares. "Try not to offend the gods or the bread." This game is improvised, evolving with each turn. Someone rolls a handful of pebbles from a basket, counting only the white ones. Someone else sings a challenge song before moving forward. A child recites a joke badly and still wins the round. It's loose, unpredictable, and filled with glee. A mainstream historical fact bobs to the surface like a lotus petal. Egypt's people were not always solemn and ceremonial. In fact, many of their wall paintings, ostraca and graffiti, reveal a culture rich with satire, silliness, and humor. They laughed at their priests, told jokes about donkeys, and made fun of one another's hair. The idea that all games were played with spiritual gravitas is, well, a modern invention. And here tonight that truth is living, vibrant. You land on the loaf of bread square. Everyone cheers. "Compliment the baker," someone shouts. You turn to the woman beside you and declare, "Your flatbread is so round it's been mistaken for the sun." The crowd erupts. The baker, in a cloud of flour, bows dramatically. "I am Ra," he bellows. "Worship my wheat." Even in this moment of pure goofiness, you feel the same warmth you did during the ceremonial game. Different tone, same truth. Games bring people together. Whether in worship or in wild laughter, they collapse the spaces between us. A quirky tidbit slips in. In some villages, elders would intentionally create nonsense rules for children's games, changing them mid-play to test creativity and adaptability. These weren't errors. They were lessons teaching young minds to embrace uncertainty, improvise and collaborate. You're seeing that spirit now. The rules here aren't fixed. They're suggestions. The real objective isn't winning, it's building the mood, making sure everyone's smiling. Maybe that's what ancient fun looked like. Not a tournament, but a trickster's theater. Historians still argue whether these forms of play influenced festival traditions, comedic rituals, or even the early development of theater. After all, Dionysian drama and Egyptian performance art may not be so different. Masks, movement, laughter, they all start with play. As the game continues, you lose track of time. You sing a rule into existence, land on a goat square, invent a riddle, win a fig you never asked for, and lose it in a pretend battle with a cat. You laugh so hard your stomach aches. Eventually, the pebbles are gathered. The board is smoothed out. Someone leans over and hands you a token made from a broken bit of painted pottery, red and blue, still bright. "For your pouch," she says, "from the game that didn't make sense but made your face light up." You take it, smiling. 6 tokens now. 6 memories. As the group disperses into the night, you sit for a moment longer, watching as someone draws lazy stars in the dirt with a stick. There's music playing faintly from the other end of the village, flutes again, soft and slurred, like a lullaby that can't quite stay awake. The moon rides high, casting the world in silver. And in that light, even the shadows feel gentle. You head back to your mat, pockets full and heart fuller. Tonight wasn't solemn or spiritual. It wasn't a reenactment of life's great journey. It was laughter, the kind that lingers like footprints in sand. And as your eyes begin to close, you realize this too is part of the story. Not all history is heavy. Some of it dances barefoot by torchlight. You wake with a smile still clinging to your lips. The sun barely a thought on the horizon. The village is quieter now, its pulse slowed, as if even the walls themselves are napping. But the games continue, like echoes gently rolling through. The morning mist. You rise and stretch, joints loose from sleep and laughter. The earth feels warm beneath your feet, and somewhere nearby a pair of doves argue in coos. With your pouch gently jingling, 6 tokens now, a private constellation, you make your way toward the edge of the riverbank, where reeds lean into. The current and the world feels just a bit softer. There you find an old fisherman seated on a low stool, his line dangling lazily in the Nile. But what catches your eye isn't the fishing rod. It's the pattern etched into the flat stone beside him, a grid of circles, shallow indentations like tiny craters in a lunar landscape. And beside it, a small pile of pebbles, seeds and shells. He notices your gaze. It's a game, he rasps, voice like worn linen. They call it aseb in some places. Others just say shells and stones. He pats the stone gently. Played it since my grandfather had teeth. You sit beside him, cross-legged. The stone is cool, its edges smoothed by generations of hands. He hands you a handful of seeds, lightweight, almost weightless, like sleep that hasn't quite arrived. 12 pits, 6 each, 2 storage bowls at the ends. Take and drop, count and claim. A mainstream historical fact surfaces from memory. Mancala-like games, pit and pebble variations, have been found across the ancient world. In Egypt, carved boards similar to this one appear in tombs and ruins, sometimes mistaken for ceremonial basins. Their rules varied wildly from region to region, but the core remained: sow, collect, repeat. The old man begins slowly, scooping 4 seeds from one pit, dropping them one by one around the board. His movements are measured, hypnotic. The rhythm of motion, the soft clink of seed meeting stone, it's less a game now and more a meditation. You mimic him, fumbling a little, and he chuckles. It's not about winning, he says. It's about remembering, counting, moving forward. Historians still argue whether these games were tools for trade apprentices, teaching counting and resource management, or simply pastoral amusements to pass the hours between floods. Some even suggest they were metaphors for farming cycles, planting seeds, watching them grow, gathering the harvest. You like that idea. especially as the sun creeps higher, illuminating the fisherman's face, a map of years and wisdom. He makes a move that earns him a small pile of your shells. Better luck next time, he grins, and then, as casually as a yawn, he says, I once played this with a merchant from the sea. He used pearls instead of seeds, said it reminded him of home. A quirky tidbit. Archaeologists once unearthed a pit and seed game board made of coral and driftwood on a Red Sea trade outpost, suggesting even seafarers carried their games with them. A reminder, perhaps, that wherever people go, play follows. This game continues, slow and deliberate. No cheering crowd, no fig stakes or invented singing squares. Just two people, a pile of seeds, and the gentle hush of the river beside them. Eventually, he leans back, brushing his palms clean. You play slow, he says. That's good. Means you're not rushing to the end. He picks out one of the smoothest seeds and places it in your hand. Take it. Carry the rhythm. 7 tokens now, each with its own weight, its own whisper. You thank him and walk slowly back toward the heart of the village, past women drawing water, past a boy leading, a stubborn goat, past the scent of coriander and simmering lentils drifting through the morning air. The village is waking again, and somewhere another board is being drawn. Another player is waiting, and then you hear it, a familiar voice. Come, we need one more. It's the child from the Fig Square game, waving wildly beside a fresh board scratched in the dirt. A mix of old and new symbols. You catch sight of the jackal, the spiral, the loaf of bread. They've made a new game, stitched together from pieces of all the others. You're the river token this time, she declares. You sit, laughing, letting them explain the rules, which change by the minute. At one point, you must answer a riddle to move. Later, you must hum a tune while hopping forward. The pieces are mismatched. The logic, invented. The joy, entirely real. And as you play, you think, this is how it always begins. A stone, a seed, a laugh, a story. Historians may never record this game, may never find this dirt-scratched board, centuries from now. But that doesn't matter. What matters is the way the children lean forward, eyes bright. What matters is the rhythm of your hand, dropping a token into a square. What matters is the play. Afternoon slides in like warm oil, golden and unhurried. The village too slows to match it. Children retreat into shade. Dogs sprawl across cool stone, and even the doves seem to coo at half volume. You've played, rested, played again, and now you walk with no purpose other than to follow the hush of time. It leads you to a workshop at the far edge of the village, a wide open-air space shaded with woven mats and thick with the scent of cedarwood and beeswax. Inside, artisans carve furniture legs, sand down door panels, and shape delicate boxes with small brass hinges. But in the far corner, tucked beneath a shelf stacked high with scrolls and unfinished statues, a woman sits bent over a board. Not a game board exactly. A blueprint. Drawn with charcoal onto stretched linen, it's a layout for something complex, a Senet board, yes, but reimagined. She dots symbols, draws rivers through the middle rows, adds birds where there were once squares. What is it? You ask. She glances up. A dreaming board. You raise your eyebrows. I redesign old games, she explains. Take what's familiar and ask what it could become. She gestures to a shelf lined with prototypes. Senet with hexagonal tiles, Mehen spiraling inward instead of outward. One board shaped like a papyrus bloom, its petals unfolding into pathways. She invites you to hold one. It's heavy, cool, carved from a soft black stone that shimmers faintly in the light. A mainstream historical thought finds you. While most games appear consistent in archaeological record, there's growing belief that they were never quite as fixed as we imagine. Families added their own rules, villages modified shapes. Artisans like this one, long forgotten, tweaked and transformed the tools of play just as surely as they carved statues or wrote poems. Historians still argue whether these variations reflect regional identities or simply creative impulses. Whether the shifting boards were used for teaching, meditation, or even secret codes. But one thing's clear, games weren't static relics. They were living things, like language, like dreams. The woman hands you a brush and a pot of mineral pigment. Want to add something? You hesitate, then dip the brush into a soft teal and draw a crescent moon in one square. She nods. Now it's balanced. She tells you of her favorite variation, a version of Hounds and Jackals where the pieces can only move when the players make each other laugh. It's harder than you'd think, she adds with a smirk, especially if your opponent's grumpy. A quirky tidbit blooms in memory. In some private tombs, game boards were found with custom carvings, symbols not present on standard models. Some Egyptologists believe these were personalized for their owners, tailored with secret meanings or coded family lore. Perhaps a square that looks like a goose meant home. Perhaps a spiral meant second chances. No one truly knows. The woman opens a small box filled with pieces, pegs shaped like lotus blossoms, tokens painted with stars, small pyramids with gold-tipped tops. Each one tells a different story, she says, lifting a sun-shaped token. This one's cursed, loses every time. She hands you a piece, a cool oblong carved from carnelian, etched with a swirl like a gust of wind. It's a wandering piece, she says. Moves differently in every game, sometimes forward, sometimes sideways, sometimes not at all. You feel the weight of it. Strange how something so small can feel so much like a decision waiting to happen. 8 tokens now, each gifted, each marking a different kind of play. You help her finish her dream board, dabbing stars into corner tiles, outlining new paths in gold dust. By the time you're done, the board gleams with possibility. No one will know how to play it at first, but someone will try. That's how all games begin. Before you leave, she wraps the carnelian piece in linen and tucks it into your palm. When you invent your own board, she says, start with that one. You thank her, feeling the warmth of her workshop stay with you even as you step back into the sun. Outside, the heat has softened into something honeyed, the sky shifting. Toward evening, you walk slowly, fingers curled around your newest token, thinking about what your own board might look like, what rules you'd write, what stories you'd build with each turn, and you begin to notice the entire village is a game. The streets are tiles, the houses, spaces, the people, moving pieces, pausing, trading, laughing, retreating. There's rhythm here, flow, movement, and chance. You stop beneath a sycamore tree and press the carnelian token to your chest. Maybe that's what the Egyptians understood best, that life itself is a board, that each choice, each pause, each story shared is another step forward, backward, or sideways, and sometimes the best pieces are the ones that wander. Evening returns like a soft drumbeat, slow, steady, and pulling everyone inward. You follow its rhythm through the heart of the village, where torches are being lit one by one, flickering gently against mud brick walls and casting the world in bronze and shadow. You can feel the hush of anticipation. Something's about to begin. A cluster of villagers has gathered in the central courtyard, dragging benches and woven mats into a wide circle. At its center stands a young man with coal-lined eyes and an exaggerated swagger. His tunic is patched but brightly dyed, and his expression says, "Watch closely, this is going to be ridiculous." A voice beside you whispers, "The night game." You find a spot near the front and settle in. No boards here, no tokens, just a small raised platform and a collection of wooden masks painted with animal faces, jackals, cats, birds, and even one that looks suspiciously like a very smug crocodile. The crowd quiets. The young man picks up the cat mask and places it on his face. Instantly, his posture shifts, graceful, mocking, a feline in human skin. He begins to narrate in a sing-song cadence. Once, long ago, there was a cat who loved to play Senet, but only when the moon was crooked and the bread slightly burnt. Laughter bubbles up. The game has begun. It's not a game of chance, it's a game of memory, of improvisation, of wits. The crowd plays too. At key moments, they must answer riddles, fill in rhymes, or act out instructions. One woman is told to walk like a startled goose. A child must recite a proverb backward. You're called upon to finish a line. And if the crocodile offers you tea, you respond, decline, politely, but with your shoes on. The crowd explodes. The crocodile mask nods in approval. A mainstream historical fact peeks in. Storytelling games were common in ancient Egyptian gatherings, especially during festival nights. These interactive performances combined drama, wit, and communal memory with rotating roles and shifting storylines. Some were even competitive, awarding honey cakes or garlands to the best improvisers. Historians still argue whether these events were truly games or early forms of theater. Some call them proto-drama, while others believe they evolved directly into temple performances and ritual plays. But the laughter, the shared breath, that's unmistakable play. Back in the courtyard, the game twists again. Each mask is passed hand to hand, and a new tale begins. A man dons the ibis mask and tells the story of a talking scroll who forgot how to read. You can't help but admire the absurdity, the ease with which truth and nonsense coexist here. Someone hands you the jackal mask. You hesitate, then lift it to your face. The world shifts, just slightly. You drop your voice a register, tilt your head and say, "This jackal never played by the rules, so the rules left." Laughter, applause. Someone hands you a string of dried fig halves. Prize for excellent. Mischief, they say. A quirky tidbit flickers. In some regions, players of these night games would be assigned animal roles for an entire festival cycle. It wasn't just for play. It shaped how they spoke, how they interacted. It blurred the line between self and story. You return the mask, fig string in hand, and watch as the game winds on, each tale building on the last, looping like a sleepy spiral. There's no winner here, no final turn. Just a slow fade like embers glowing in the dark. Eventually, the storyteller bows. The masks are set gently in a reed basket. The crowd claps softly, like the settling of wings. The young man, in cold grins, and says, "Next time you tell it." People begin to drift away, the hush settling once again over stone and sand. You rise too, your token pouch a little heavier now, not with a carved piece, but with the memory of your jackal line, of communal mischief, of a game made entirely of voices. You walk toward your mat beneath the stars, belly full of figs, mind full of echoes. 7 tokens had a shape. This 8th one, purely a feeling, and yet it fits. It belongs. The stars are bright tonight, as if watching. You think of the mask, now resting in its basket, waiting for the next story. You think of how easily joy can take form, through poor steps, proverbs, punchlines. Historians may never find this game, but you played it, you'll remember, and that's enough. The final day arrives quietly, as if it knows how to slip in unnoticed. There's no fanfare, no awakening drumbeat, just a gradual brightening of the sky, a rooster's tentative crow, and the scent of something sweet rising from a nearby clay. Oven. You sit on the edge of your mat, pouch of tokens in your lap. 8 distinct pieces, each one earned not through battle or brilliance, but through being there, really being there. The games, the people, the moments. You let your fingers trace over the shapes. The jackal peg, the river pebble, the translucent bead, the pink fig token, the Abydos stone, the dreaming carnelian swirl, the seed from the fisherman, and the memory of a jackal's story. A small universe in your hand. But before you go, because something in the air tells you you'll soon be going, there is one more place to visit. A child runs past, trailing a kite made of reeds and linen. It lifts lazily in the morning breeze, tugging skyward, and you follow its line of flight through the alleys until you reach the old temple ruins at the hill's edge. The stones here are softened with age, sun-bleached and vine-wrapped, no longer holy in the strict sense, but quietly sacred nonetheless. There's a low wall carved with worn hieroglyphs, and atop it, an elder kneels with a brush and a bowl of pigment. He's painting a game board, not a physical one, an offering. You move closer. The board is painted in deep red ochre, flanked by 2 names you don't recognize. It's a memory board, he explains without looking up. For the dead. He finishes the last square, then places a small piece of bread at each corner. So they can play, he adds. On the other side, a mainstream historical note surfaces softly. Many tombs in ancient Egypt included boards like Senet, not just for entertainment, but to symbolize the soul's journey through the afterlife. To move across the board was to pass through obstacles, avoid chaos, and reach a place of peace. These games weren't merely pastimes, they were prayers in disguise. Historians still debate whether the dead were believed to actually play, or if the presence of the board was symbolic, a sign of readiness, a ritual map. But most agree it mattered that it was there. The elder invites you to help. You dip a reed into the pigment and draw a single tile, a wave pattern, a nod to your river pebble. He nods. Nice touch. Then he unwraps a bundle of tokens, simple, rounded stones, polished smooth by time. These were his, he says, pointing to the name on the wall. He never played without his own set. A small group gathers, kneeling in a semicircle. Quiet prayers are spoken. The elder casts a handful of seeds across the board, murmuring instructions for the spirit's journey. Someone hums, someone cries just a little, and someone else very softly chuckles. He always cheated on the fourth row, she says, and somehow even that feels holy. You step back and watch as they scatter petals over the wall, the board already fading under the sun's slow climb. You feel no urge to photograph it, no impulse to immortalize it. This is one game meant only for the now, and with that, your time among these games begins to draw to a close. You walk once more through the village, past faces you know, and those you only glimpsed once. A few smile, a few wave. A child chases a chicken through a Senet grid drawn in chalk. Life goes on, and always play continues. As you return to your mat for the last time, you feel the weight of the tokens in your palm. Not heavy, but meaningful. You think of the people who gave them to you, the ones who taught you to laugh mid-move, to lose graciously, to invent your own path, to slow down, and always to stay in the game. 8 tokens, 8 memories, 8 ways to remember that play is not a luxury. It is a language, a way of belonging. You lie back, arms crossed under your head, the mat rustling beneath you. Above, the sky shifts into twilight once again. And now, wind down, 300 words. Now let the last light fade gently behind your eyes. Let your breath slow, stretching like the Nile beneath dusk's hush. Let the memory of each game soften into the fabric of your sleep. The sound of seeds on stone, the laughter beneath fig trees, the hush of footsteps on temple floors. There's no need to remember every rule, every piece, every name. Just remember how it felt, to sit with strangers and feel like you belonged, to learn through play, to move. A small carved token and feel it carry the weight of joy. Let the images drift now, boards half drawn in dust, a jackal mask resting on a pillow of reeds, a cat-shaped token curled in someone's palm. Let the stars overhead be tiles on a final. Board and sleep be your winning square. There is no competition here, no race, no right path, just stories and the remembering of them. Your body is soft now, your eyes heavy. The wind hums through papyrus. The past cradles you in its arms. And somewhere, deep in the night, a small carved piece slides gently across a sacred board. It pauses, and then moves forward.